One. Okay, what's going on YouTube? PNG News Media back at you. And today I have another edition of the Concrete and Steel Chronicles. I'm gonna be interviewing a brother. You probably already familiar with him. He's a fellow YouTuber, 16 The Life. So, all right, brother, give the audience like just a brief introduction to who you are.
Hey, what's going on out there? My name is 16 to Life. I'm a rapper, I guess YouTuber now too, like you said. Initially, like I say, I created my page just to try to make my rap and my music more visible, and my page ended up taking on a life that I didn't expect. So now I guess I'm YouTubing too. So my street name is Chill. So if you hear me, in stories mention myself as Chill, then that's also who I go by too.
Oh, okay, all right. So tell the people where you from. Where did you come up at?
Well, I'm up out of California, Southern California, in a small town in the county of Riverside by the name of Bannon.
Okay, all right. So when you were coming up, okay, because we don't get to, like I said, your prison story, but I just want to give some background. So when you were coming up, how was your upbringing? Like, what type of guy were you coming up? Were you always in the street life, or did it come at a certain point in your life? How did all that happen?
Well, no, I was just I was just a regular dude. I didn't grow up in a impoverished community. I was like I said, I like to say sometimes, man, I was just a square gone bad. I grew up in my mom and dad, they separated when they was about maybe when I was about excuse me about 2 or 3, but my dad moved maybe about 5 minutes around the corner. I had an older brother, and the town is small one high school town. So everybody, we grew up like family. A lot of the people who I graduated with, I've been knowing ever since like first, second grade. So, we grew up like one big giant family, the whole town.
Okay, so by being a small town, how did the gang culture get there? Was it TV and people imitating, or was it the case of real gangbangers spreading their wings and getting out to the small towns?
Well, by it being a small town, I would like to say maybe about 84, 85, you had gangs migrating down from the LA area, and then
Okay,
also I had my older uncle, rest in peace, Andre McDonald, and a few other people. They had went off to YA, so they brought bits and pieces of the gang culture back.
okay. And when you say YA, what does that mean?
That's CYA, California Youth Authority.
Okay, that's like a Audi home or jail
Yeah,
for
it's like
juveniles.
it's like more like a juvenile prison, I guess.
Okay, okay. So, all right. So around, and then what gangs? When you say the gangs migrated, like what were some of the gangs that migrated down there?
Well, originally, the Crips was real prominent. We had
Mhm.
a lot of people hollering Crips and a lot of older cats. You had a few of my older homies hollering Blood, but for the most part, it was mainly just Crips. Different hoods. Actually, my uncle, he used to live in Compton, and so he used
Mhm.
to live in I guess back then it was Swamp Boys. I used to hear him say the Swamp Boys, and so like I
Okay.
say, you had certain dudes who from Bannon who bought bits and pieces of the Crippin' culture to Bannon, and it kind of like trickled down. And then later on, when you had 85, 86, when crack got real prominent, you had a lot of gang members migrate down to Bannon to sell drugs. And so we kind of got, a little bit more introduced to it through some of those guys.
Okay. All right. So so you growing up, 80s, the gang culture explodes, the crack epidemic comes to banning. So how are you navigating life? Like at this point, were you starting to get influenced? Were you how did you that's coming to play for you?
Well, I had two sets of friends. Basically, my mom,
Mhm.
she lived further in on south in Bannon. My dad, he lived on the Lower East Side. And so when I would be up
Mhm.
there visiting my dad, I'd go up to the park. Some of my friends my age were starting to sell weed and stuff. So I hopped out there with them, selling weed, kind of got into that fast money. Then it turned into selling cocaine, so that's
Mhm.
kind of how I got into that. Actually, me and my homies, we are the founders of the area that I'm from, the hood that I'm from. And so
Mhm.
let me turn this off.
Okay.
And so yeah, we like I was saying, we are the originators from our area. And so after a while, like I say, being influenced by other things we saw, we created our own hood, and
Mhm.
that's how that began.
Okay. You able to say the name of the hood?
Yeah, I'm from East Side Park up out of Banning, California. Well, actually,
Okay.
what we created was the East Side Player Gangsters, and then the younger
Okay.
generation they came up with the East Side Park.
Oh, all right. Okay. So by this time you get your hood established. So what was your first brush with the law?
Well, my very first real brush with the law, and I don't want to go deep into it only because I'm a drop a story, but I hit a liquor store owner in the head with a wooden baseball bat and
Mhm.
knocked him out in the parking lot, and I ended up going to juvenile hall behind that. So that was my first real brush with the law. That was my first time being incarcerated.
Okay. And what was that experience like? Was it an experience where you got extra rehabilitation, or was it a situation where you kind of got more into what you was doing because there wasn't no rehabilitation going on?
Well, it definitely wasn't no rehabilitation going on, and I wasn't in the juvenile facility probably 5 minutes, and I saw one of my homeboys, Scotty Ware, rest in peace. So and I also end up seeing my homeboy over there, Xavier Hunt. So when you young, you don't take heed to the life lessons like you should, and by seeing those dudes and hanging out with those dudes, being there, it was kind of like just another big party. I only end up staying. I think I stayed maybe from probably somewhere around July, somewhere up in there. I got out on my brother's birthday. I never forget that. I got out on my brother's birthday, August 9th. My birthday is August 5th. And so I went to court around like maybe July 15, 17, 16, I don't know, somewhere up in there. And I was hoping the judge said, well, we're going to bring you back in court on August. And I was hoping, it would be before the 5th or on the 5th, but he said August 9th. So that's how I remember that. So when I came back, I ended up getting out and they threw me on some probation.
All right. So after that brush with the law, what happens next? Like, what is your life goal? Do you try to like, all right, after this, I'm trying to straighten out, or you like, you know what? I'm more gangster now. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing.
No, you know what? More gangster because actually, like I say later on, once I got in self-help and I look back on it, I got into it with these people up here because they had jumped on my father. And so
Oh,
while I was incarcerated, my father he had went over there a couple of times. One time he threw a big old rock through the storefront window. Another time he went back and excuse me, set fire to the trash can. So as I look back on it later on in life, my dad actually applauded and condoned my events that day. So it just
mhm,
spearheaded me on. And like I say, by that time I'd been full fledged selling crack by that time. So I didn't see nothing wrong. Had my father said, boy, you shouldn't have done that. Who knows? It possibly may have deterred me. But like I say, he
mhm,
he congratulated me and he was glad. He was glad that I'd done what I'd done. He didn't say that, but in his actions, I was in
mhm,
juvenile hall. He would come over there and he would come sign passes and sign me out for any and everything that he could. At that point in time, I wore braces. So he said I had to go get my braces checked. He'd come take me out for 5, 6 hours. Another time he came back, took me to go get my eyes checked, said I had to go to the doctor. So like I say, as I look back on it, he was kind of like rewarding me. I think he felt proud because he didn't tell me to go up there and do it. I was at my mom's house and this particular liquor store happens to be between my mom's house and my dad's house. So when I walked past there, I went and done this, and so I think he was proud, and he was just like reward me.
all right. So okay, so you back out. You feeling more gangster. So when do you get your first experience with like the real, like outside of juvenile stuff?
Well, the very first time I went to. Are you talking about being incarcerated?
Yeah.
Well, the very by okay, so by later on, I ended up going to Montana. I moved to Montana, and the very first time I got incarcerated out there is my house that got raided.
Mhm.
My house had got raided, and I got a 10-year sentence, but it was suspended all 60 days. They gave me some probation, and I went to jail up there for about 60 days, and then
Wow,
the
my
next Billings, Montana, yes sir.
okay. And what are the circumstances that get you out to Montana?
Well, sometime around Thanksgiving or little maybe before that, I was in the hood selling dope. I ended up getting shot. I jumped in the car to make a sale, and it was some white smokers up in there. We call them crackheads or whatever. They pulled a gun out and try to rob me. They shot me in the ass, And so I recovered from that. Maybe a few weeks later, my cousin James, he happened to stay out there. He came down to visit. He said, "Hey man, you're not doing nothing out here. Why don't you come out here and just hang out with me a little bit?" So I ended up going out there, and I liked it.
Mhm. Okay, okay. And so you go to so what's the Montana jail like there? I mean, can I imagine it's not anything like Cali system. What's it out like there?
Well, I was only in the county jail out there. I never made it to the
Okay.
prison, but it was like, very different type of atmosphere. It was just real laid back, big old giant day room, two big giant floor model TVs. The blacks were on one side, and the Indians and the whites were on another, because they have a lot of Indians out there. And it was like I say, it was
Mhm.
kickback. We had a rate. You could buy your own radio up in there, and by that time, I'm selling big drugs. So I got everything I need up in there: radio, a bunch of food, and ordering local newspapers. Now, what in Montana, they had a lot of pimps out there. At this point in time, right before I went to jail, I had just got introduced by listening to these pimps to Donald Goins and Iceberg Slim. See, I'm a voracious reader. I love to read. I didn't wait to come to prison to start reading. I've always been reading, even on the street. And so I'd been hearing about this Iceberg Slim dude. So I had went and ordered me some books. So when I got sentenced to jail, just so happened I had my brother go up there and have him forward the books to the county jail. So like I said, I was reading in there, and I knew I only had 60 days. So it was kickback time.
Okay. Right. So after Montana, after you do your little 60-day in the Montana County Jail, then what direction do you go to? Do you just stay out there and keep shop going, or do you beat it back to Cali?
Oh no, by this point in time, I had moved out there.
Right.
I had an actual my driver's license. I had a Montana driver's license, because the police had pulled me over a few times, and they kept sweating me, because I kept telling them I'm visiting, but they only went for that for so long, because I'm selling drugs, and word is getting around. So at this time, I hop back out, and I'm right back into selling drugs. I never forget, when I got out, I had a pimp partner of mine. I beat him out of about, maybe I would like to say, about $14,000 gambling in the
Mm.
span of about 2-3 days. So I came back to
Mm.
California, bought me I already had a car. I bought some rims, threw a paint job on it, got some more drugs, and I'm right back in the swing of things.
Okay. Okay. And then how long do you stay there? What eventually brings you back to back to Riverside?
Well, Riverside County, but
Mm.
okay, what happened is Montana is in the middle of nowhere in terms of drugs. And so, I'd take some drugs out there, I'd run out of drugs, I'd come back. Come back to California. So I came back to California to get some more drugs.
Okay. All right. And then do you eventually then what lands you what lands you to your stint in the Cali system?
Well, okay, so me and my homie, rest in peace, OZ, we end up going to a party. We get into it at a party with some rival gang members. It's a shootout. About 3 or 4 people is hit. One person hit in the head, and turns out that me and OZ is the suspects in this shooting. So that's how I end up going on the run for about a year. I'm all
Mm.
over the place. I'm in Denver, Colorado. I'm in Portland, Oregon. So eventually I get captured, and that's how I wind up in the system.
Okay. And then okay, so before we get into the actual system, does your name come out of that whole situation at all?
You talking about the shooting?
Yeah, like when you your name 16 to life, is between the shooting and the sentencing, is your name evolved from that?
Oh, oh yes, sir. Yes, sir. So like I say, eventually I was captured in 94. Um, well, the shooting took place in 93. I'm captured about a year later in 94. Now, in the span of me being on the run, I also ended up getting charged with another murder. So besides the 3 attempted murders that I had from that shooting at the party, I had another murder. So they ended up charging me with that. So I go to trial and lose on the attempted murder. They give me 9 years plus life. I sat in the county about another year. They ended up giving me a deal on the murder and gave me 16 years with halftime. But they ran the 16 and the 9 together. So then I had to do 16 years. Then I had to do a life sentence. I didn't have 16 to life. I had 16 years plus life. And so that's where I end
Mm.
up coming up with the name when I got out. I love to rap, and so I still wanted to try to give it a try, and so like I say, my street name is Chill, but it's a lot of people rapping under the name Chill. And so I tried to come up with something catchy and went with 16 to
Okay.
life.
All right, cool. All right, so you get finally get captured. So you went, so you they take you to Riverside County Jail. Okay,
Uh-huh.
talk me through that experience. I mean, when you go in, do you have to like tell people who you are, where you from? What's that whole experience like?
Well, yeah, okay. So like me, I don't believe in, giving the police unnecessary information. So I told the police I didn't gang bang, and
Okay.
so but I told them, I wanted to be in an all black tank. So they said the only
Mhm.
all black tank they had was the Crip tank. I said, okay, I think I'll be cool up in there. Put me up in there. And they said, oh yeah, it's a lightweight Crip tank. You'll be all right. But the second I get in there, I'm not in there 2 or 3 minutes, and they fighting. I'm on the phone, and a fight break out right by where I'm at. So, but soon, yeah, as soon as you walk through the door, they banging on you, because even though we're in Riverside County, the people up in there was from predominantly LA County gangs. A lot of LA gangs was up in there and stuff. And so the second I get through the door, they, what's up, homie? Where you from? And they hit you up and banging on you and stuff.
All right. So the tank was predominantly a Crip tank. And so how
No,
did that tank
it was
function?
it was
Was it
all
where it was everybody together like this, or were they like right, beefing amongst each other? What was the dynamic of that tank?
oh, you had it was a lot of it was a lot of fighting up in there. Like I say, it was you had dudes up in there who may have been in there for killing other dudes, homies that was up in there. So there was fights all the time. It was I mean, it was cool, and it was some kicking it, but there was at least 3 or 4 fights a day, at least, maybe more. Just by cats being young, a lot of
Mm.
bravado, a lot of egos, and so it was only cracking up in there. Matter of fact, I tell a story on my YouTube page where I'm only in there a few days, and I get rushed and cut on the back. I'm in the cell fighting somebody, and one of his friends come in there, and he had an like, I guess it was like maybe a razor stuck in a, and I never seen it, so maybe a razor stuck in a comb or a pencil, or I don't know how he had it hooked up, but he end up coming up in there and stabbing me on the back.
Okay. So all you all being Crips, it wasn't enough to quell all that, and they still just went at each other.
Well, yeah, no, see, especially the county jail, there's less structure in the county than
Okay.
it is in prison. And back then, and by then, Crips were definitely into it with other Crips real heavy on the street. So it's no structure. Like I say, we were cool up in there to a certain point, because they wouldn't let,
Mm.
if you wasn't a Crip, they wouldn't even gonna let you come up in there. But there was still a lot of, still a lot of beef amongst each other over silly stuff, whether it was the phone, whether it was the dominoes, whatever.
Okay. All right. All right. So fast forward, and okay, so you get sentenced, and then you off to the penitentiary. Okay. So when you leave the county jail, where's your first stop, and what was that like?
Well, when you leave the county jail and you catch the chain, that's what they call it out here, because they actually put a chain on your legs and in your waist and stuff. You go to what's
Okay.
called a reception center. At that time, the reception center was a prison called Tehachapi. It's up in the mountains. And
Okay.
so I went to Tehachapi. You see the counselors. They assess you. They figure out where you're gonna go, and then they send you to whatever prison they deem you to be housed at.
Okay. So where did they deem you to go to?
They ended up sending me to a prison that was just opening up. It was called Salinas Valley, and I would say it's up north, maybe mid California. I don't know how they term it, but yeah, it was Salinas Valley. It was a level 4 180, so that's the most maximum security prison that California have. And the horrible part about it is it's a brand new prison. So when,
Mm.
excuse me, the prisons open when they're brand new, because the yard was only like maybe a month or two old. When I first go in my cell, there's still screws and sawdust everywhere. So you had the Southern Mexicans, you had the Northern Mexicans. I believe even the Bulldogs was up there for a time. The Bulldogs are
Okay.
some Mexicans out of Fresno, but they had got into a little beef with the I believe the Southern Mexicans, and they weren't programming each other together, so they had started fighting at some point. So, but then you got the Crips and the Bloods, and everybody is jockeying for a position. Maybe this gang or this race might want these tables over here. These guys want these tables over here, and if they can't come to no compromise, and they go to war about it. They fight about it, or they squabbing, stabbing and stuff. And so that's dangerous element about opening up a new prison. I would never want to go to a new prison when it's just opening. Sorry about that. Well, give me 1 second.
Mhm.
All right, so yeah, that was the thing about that. It was a brand new prison. It was just opening, and all the races, because the California prisons are racial. Everybody sticks with their own race. I hear in other prisons in other states, they'll put a black in the cell with a white or something like that. But no, in California, the police, the correctional officers, they kind of like egg on the racism in certain ways by a lot of their policies, and so they, like I say, each race sticks with their own race. The blacks stick with the blacks, the whites stick with the whites, so on and so forth. We don't mix sports. But now the Mexicans and the whites, they program together on the same side. They'll play sports together. And the blacks, we play sports with the Asians.
Okay. All right. So you get into this level 4 180, and how do you find your place? Like do you say, okay, since you kind of came up with the Crips in the county jail, did you kind of gravitate toward them, or did another group of blacks pull you in? Like, how do you find your particular space?
Well, like I said, once again, by me being from a small area, I just kind of went up there and I kind of did me. I didn't really have no homies, or nobody up there.
Oh.
It was an older cat by the name of Big Heron from the Grandies. And somehow me and him began talking, and he said, hey, you know what, man, you move in the cell with me. Now, Big H had been down for about 20 years, and due to that, and due to a lot of things he had done previously in other prisons, he had a lot of respect. So he kind of moved me in there with me, taught me some of the ropes and stuff like that. But sometimes it's it's hard when you're from a small area, because sometimes you get to a certain place, you might not have no homies up there. Like, you have dudes from certain hoods, any pen they go to, they're gonna have 10 to 15 homies on the yard. But by me being from a small town, it wasn't like that.
Okay. So would you describe, how would you describe the stake? I know prison isn't easy, but like I said, but by you kind of like doing it yourself, was things harder for you? Did you have to like prove yourself more to people that I'm not the one to mess with?
Well, it just all depends sometimes, for the most part, prison is relatively easy if you don't, a lot of times the trouble that people get into, they bring on themselves by, gambling or talking too much shit, or just doing certain stuff that brings attention to them. Now, every now and then, of course, and then sometimes when you're not from a large area gang, then of course people gonna try to try you too. So it just all depends on who you happen to run across, and the situations like that. But for me, it was relatively easy. I stayed on the basketball court a whole lot, so
Okay.
that's what I did. I played basketball, and I got into certain little stuff on the basketball court from time to time at other prisons, not necessarily up there, because the level 4s, one thing that's real good about level 4s is it's based on respect. It's a whole lot of respect up there, especially back then. People programmed with respect for each other, and it was a lot of maturity, I guess, being shown by people up there.
Okay. Now, earlier, or a little while ago, you mentioned that there's a lot of racial dynamics, a lot of racial politics in the Cali system. So that being said, how often did you see melees, like between whites and blacks and Mexicans, like riots? Did you see that a lot?
It was often. Yeah, I seen it a lot. When I was up there, I seen, like I said, I didn't, and I was kind of young, so I didn't ask a whole lot of questions, but I seen the Hispanics, they were getting into it, and they kept getting into it. So now what I believe now, and now what I know is now, I believe it was the Southern Hispanics was pushing the Bulldogs off the yard. Then I seen a group of whites, they had got into it with each other out there. I think it was the San Diego Woods, because you have the Peckerwoods, you might have the Aryan brothers, the Nazi lowriders. But so it was the San Diego Woods were basically just white boys. They don't really gang, they're not necessarily in a gang. They call themselves Peckerwoods, and they was fighting with somebody. So, and then, at other prisons I've seen race riots, especially if you have a white Crip or a white Blood. He comes and he tries to hang with the Crips or the Bloods. The white boys are going to feel that he's a racial traitor. And they're going to come and tell the blacks, hey, this guy got to go. The blacks is like, okay, this dude ain't going nowhere, especially if that dude stands up for himself. then it's going to turn into a race riot. Same thing if you have like a Mexican Crip or Mexican blood. But there's been a few instances where I did see a Mexican blood on the yard, and they didn't bother him. But for the most part, they're gonna demand. They're not gonna ask. They're gonna demand that dude leave, and if you don't leave, then it's gonna turn into a racial riot.
Okay, so and then when those rights, so in your experience, how did the aftermath? Did the brothers stand and protect them, and did he stay, or did he end up leaving for the better of everybody? What's usually the aftermath in those situations?
Most of the time he stays, and
Okay.
basically it's just like he ain't going nowhere, and it's on.
Okay.
Now a lot of times too, though, of course, the correctional officers and guards, they'll get wind of the situation and they'll come remove, because it'll be a big standoff. You might have 200 or 300 white boys, on one side of the yard. Then you may have another 400 or 500 brothers on the other side of the yard. And so the guards, they get wind of what's going on. And a lot of times they'll come in and move the inmate in question or the convict in question before it jumps off. But sometimes, sometimes it doesn't. Like I had a homie that owned the yard. He was a white Crip, and he had been there for a while. When I got to Ironwood, he was already there. He had been there for a while. Then all it takes though is one inmate, another person to come. I think some white person came from another prison and said, "Hey, what is that dude doing running with the blacks?" "Oh no, brother, this doesn't go." And so he was coming back from work one day, and some white boys rushed it. So about 2 or 3 hours later, once they let us out for chow, there was a big riot in the even though he was gone, the blacks wasn't accepting that, and there was a big riot in the chow hall.
Okay. And speaking on riots, keeping allowing that conversation, I often hear, people say, okay, because the blacks are the least organized as compared to the other groups, the whites, the Southern Mexicans, they don't do as well in riots. From your experience, how well when the racial riots go down, how well do the blacks do?
Well, in my opinion, in my perspective, they've always done well, but they could have done better. See, a lot of times I think, especially back then, a lot of the black convicts, they were just warriors. We grew up fighting. So we're used to combat, but sometimes we're caught by the element of surprise. And so when you're not prepared and you're not organized, you might have now another race may come out and they may see a smaller group of blacks, and they'll rush the smaller group because of course it's all about the victory. They're trying to get the win. They're not going to run into the bigger crowd or whatever. And so by the blacks not necessarily knowing what's going on, it takes them a minute to regroup, to gather, because a lot of times when other races attack the black inmates, it's planned, it's synchronized. They already know. They maybe been planning for 2 or 3 days. So they know. And, the blacks will be playing basketball and handball and walking around talking, doing what they normally do. And it's a surprise attack.
Okay. But they do hold their own pretty much.
Oh, most definitely. Especially when it's just a sporadic instance. Like say, for instance, maybe I'm jogging and I happen to bump into a white guy and we start fighting and nobody knows a riot is about to happen. And it's just spontaneous. All the blacks, they get cracking, they get cracking. Okay. So most times if any of your other race has any action at the blacks whatsoever, it has to be planned, but also the blacks are vastly outnumbered by Southern Hispanics. Maybe I would say on some yards at least 3 to 1, possibly even 4 to 1 ratio.
Okay, all right. And something else I want to ask you about. I understand, like, because when you came in, from what I'm hearing, it kind of sounds like it's a transitional period. Because I know, take like the 70s, there was a lot of, when younger guys come in, the older homies would educate them, like they were using Swahili and stuff like that. They were putting them up on game. There were certain things like you just didn't say. But it seems like your generation, when, just that generation, that era, not just particular, things started to change. Can you speak on that?
Yeah. When I came in, the things that you just spoke of and mentioned were basically on their way out the window. Now, like I say, being in the cell initially with Big Heron, he would tell me about when he first came to prison. Like you mentioned, there was no using the N-word on the tier. There wasn't no using the N-word whatsoever. They was going to warn you one time, then the next time it was probably going to be some physical discipline or something. That wasn't allowed. Then also they had what was called study periods, where they pass around a certain type of literature. You know, if brothers couldn't read, they had people who would teach them how to read. You know, they wanted to educate them, of course, to make them stronger. It was certain type of books they wanted them to read so they could become conscious, become black conscious and stuff. You know, you had to be up in the morning, maybe about 5 o'clock in the morning. Wasn't no sleeping all day. You know, that's why you still have a lot of inmates. They would roll their mattress up. They'd roll their mattress up and maybe lean up against the mattress. They'd keep their boots on all day. Wasn't no taking your boots off until that you were locked in at night. And just things like this created structure. There was Swahili being spoke because actually sometimes in prison it's advantageous to be able to speak over people's heads, you know. And then you have the Hispanics, you know, you have the others, which is the Asians, the Samoans, you know, the Chinese, the Koreans, whatever. You know, most races have another race that can speak, but like I say, at times, you know, you have the Hispanics and they speak, of course, Spanish. Sometimes it's a necessity to be able to talk over other people's heads, you know, without other people being in your business. And this is why the brothers took to learning Swahili. But now when I came to prison, you know, especially when I dropped down to the lower 3 yards, you'd hear brothers talking Swahili and you hear some of the younger brothers, oh, that's that dumb level 4 shit, man. Why they doing that? That shit ain't necessary, because they didn't understand the importance of sometimes having to be able to, you know, speak in another language. You may have to tell somebody, hey man, come out, it's about to be a riot. Or sometimes you may want to talk to somebody without having someone else, another race, in your conversation. So things like that was a necessity.
So it seems, so in your opinion, I know the young guys didn't want to embrace the older ways. And was that the reason for the downfall? Did the older guys try to keep it going, or what do you think would really, you know, put the nail in that coffin?
Well, I think the reason for the downfall was basically change in mentality. You know, just people coming from the streets, youngsters coming from the streets, just didn't have the same understanding of, you know, they care less and less about blackness, you know, as each decade passed. Like I say, when I first came to prison, you know, using the N-word, it really wasn't allowed, you know. By the time I left, and it wasn't allowed at all with any other race. That wasn't allowed. You know, by the time I left, every other race was saying it. The Mexicans, oh, they love to say it. You know, the Mexicans, they love to say it. You had the Chinese saying it. The Asians saying it, and you had even white people saying it. And so, you know, now for instance, if there's only like maybe there's 600 brothers on the yard, let's say for instance. Now you only have 10 of them that care about another race saying the N-word. So these 10, they're gonna press up on the white boy or whoever using the N-word. They're gonna get into it. They're gonna leave the yard, and then the N-word is still gonna be being used. So they're gonna be nothing but a sacrificial lamb. I mean, everybody has to care, you know, because one person can't support a cause if everybody's not gonna support the cause. And at the end of the day, just too many brothers, they stop caring.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. So let me take it in this direction. Okay. So when you came in, so when did you start saying, you know what, this prison stuff is for the birds? I'm making a change. Like, when did you leave that criminal gangster mentality to a more like reform mentality?
I would probably say around 2000. I would like to say 2000, maybe 14, 15, around 2010, 11, excuse me, there was a dramatic shift in the parole board and things that was happening at the parole board. When I first came to prison, even if you had life with the possibility of parole, you wasn't going nowhere because the way how the board was structured, it was very unfair. Then if you did get a date, which was very, very, very unlikely, the governor had a decision to the parole board would find you suitable for parole, and the governor could take if you was in for murder, the governor could just take it, say, oh no, I reversed their decision. And so around 2009, 10, due to a lot of lawsuits that was filed by convicts, and it was ruled on in favor of the lifers, the parole board started being structured. The parole board started being changed, and they started letting lifers out. So once I seen this, you know, initially, because I dealt with having life by not thinking, I never thought I was going to get out. You know, everybody deals with it different. I didn't think I was going to get out. So that's how I dealt with it, not even thinking about it. But once I started seeing them let a few lifers out, then more and more, I said, okay, you know what, maybe I can get out. So that right there created a change in me. And then just so happened the prison in California, they really started pushing a more progressive line in terms of rehabilitation. Actually, they renamed, because at first they was the CDC, California Department of Corrections. Then I forget the year, but they added the R, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And they really started bringing in programs. They really started doing things that showed they cared a little bit more than they did in the past about actually rehabilitating. Like, for instance, one good thing they came up with is, even now, because California is based on a point system. If you have, they calculate, your crime, you get so many points for your crime, so many points for your age. You get maybe a few more points if you don't have a high school education. And so the more points you have, the higher level of security that you're on. So California prisons made it at some point in time, even though you may have a whole bunch of points that would normally put you on a level 4, if you was a certain age, they weren't going to do that, because they know that now that's going to just put you with the hardened criminals, of course, and it's going to make you more susceptible to the bullshit that goes on in prison. So now they would start putting these guys who had life and all these time on level 2, lower, on these lower minimum security institutions that had more rehabilitation available to them, and it changes them, and it helps.
So, all right, so you're taking these classes, some of the programs you brought in, but how was it, like, what kind of challenge was it for you to be one hand getting this stuff in class, but then have to go back to the yard where it can go down at any time, because you get, like, the whites could kick something off, the Mexicans, your fellow blacks, so having to always watch your back. So how, but yet you're trying to get in the mindset, I want to go home. So what was that like, trying to navigate those two different worlds?
Well, it was tough, and actually it wasn't tough because of the people on the yard. It was tough because of the expectations and the mentality I had adopted myself. I realized that I feared what people thought about me. I didn't fear them in the sense of, it wasn't a physical fear, because you hear a lot of bullshit, and that's like movie shit. Oh, you can't tell the homies I'm not gonna hang with the car no more. And now it may be for the Hispanics, but for the blacks, if you tell them, hey, listen, homie, I ain't doing that shit no more, I'm trying to go home, the majority of your homies is gonna understand, and they gonna they gonna be happy for you. So it's, all that other shit is movie shit. So, but it's just that you spent all this time trying to build up a reputation. You spend all this time, because that's all gang banging and street life is about. It's a reputation. Like my homie used to say, it takes years to build a reputation, and it only takes one time to fuck it up. You can be riding, fighting, busting, shooting, killing, stabbing for 15 years straight. The second you turn down a fade or do something deemed a coward move, then your whole reputation is flushed down the toilet. So that's what I feared. I feared how people would perceive me once I said, hey, homie, I'm not hanging with the homies no more, I'm trying to go home. So it's more of a battle within.
Okay. All right. So fast forward, you get your date, you're back in the world. How much had things changed? Like, so when you get out, was it like a culture shock? Was it like the world totally different, or did it take you, how long did it take you to adjust to being back into the real world?
For me, honestly, I can say I adjusted back real. My transition was fast. I was just outside of sometimes just like, being a little nervous, just being a little nervous. But outside of that, it was smooth, because I don't think I was just blessed with a good personality. And so it made it easier for me, just my transition. I noticed that it seemed like people were more likely to be rude, than they were when I first went to prison. And to me, I attribute it to the internet. This social media. It's cool now to talk tough and act bad and all that stuff. It was less respect. But outside of that, my transition was, it was smooth.
Okay, all right.
And then also, not to cut you off, but also I had learned some tools in some of these self-help classes that I took later on. Once I took those classes, some of those things really worked, and I would throw away the things that didn't work. The things that did work, I would use them. So that helped me to deal with some of the things that I faced.
Okay, so you talk about some of those classes that you took while you were on the inside?
Yes, self-help classes. As far as anger management, some of the classes was basically just to change and recognize when I was having negative thinking, or to learn how to create a solution for a problem before the problem even arises. So once the problem arises, I already have a solution in my head. As like, just like when you gang banging, we don't know it, but we've already created a solution to a problem. If a dude come up to you and disrespect your hood, you've already got it in your mind. You finna punch this dude in the mouth. You finna stab this dude. You know what I'm saying? You may not realize it, but the mentality that you have embraced has dictated that you do A, B, and C when a person does D, E, and F, G. So it's just recognizing these thought patterns and changing your thought patterns. And with me, honestly, it's been extremely helpful, because had I faced some of the situations before I went to prison that I'm facing now, I would have reacted the wrong way. But now that I have these tools under my belt, it's been extremely helpful for me.
Cool. That's what's up. Okay, so you know how recidivism is a really huge problem. How have you been able to avoid the trap of falling back into recidivism? Because you know it's so many things pulling at you. So what have been some of your strategies?
Well, just like I mentioned earlier, using the tools that I learned, you know, coming out here, recognizing that certain areas, certain people, certain places, certain things is not for me. It's they call them triggers, you know, because hanging in a certain area, it may, because like, okay, we all love where we from. You know, we all, regardless of what we done went and done, how much we didn't try to change, you get out. I had a friend, he got out, he saw a lot of his homies was in they was in a war. A lot of his homies, and now his homies' sons, they was in a war, and it affected him because he grew up with these people. He grew up with these people's fathers and mothers. So to see their sons and out there getting shot, it affected him, and it took him back to a place he almost didn't want to go. You understand me? So we have to be mindful to not let certain things put us back in an old place where we was. And so, like I say, it's just using the tools, learning that, you know, these things, it's caring, man, because basically it's caring, it's giving a fuck. Because when I was young, I didn't give a fuck. And now I give a fuck. I realize that me going to prison affects more than just me. You know, it affects my mom. It affects my daughter. It affects my aunt. You know, when I was in prison, my aunt, she wrote President Obama trying to get me out. So it's just caring, it's understanding, man. And that's basically what it is.
Okay. And lastly, as we kind of wind down, okay, so you back out, you know, you tell me you're not going back. And so tell me about your life now. So I know you get your YouTube channel going. I know you mentioned you rapping. So tell us more about that.
Well, like I say, I'm rapping. I didn't drop a couple mixtapes. The first one I dropped is called Free Gas, No Charge. I'm getting ready to drop another one called PNG, which is an acronym for Bandit Niggas Grinding. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just staying busy. You know, like I said, before I left prison, of course, my buddies is clowning me. And man, don't take your old ass out there rapping. You know, don't take your old ass out there rapping. But you know, like, because I used to be in the prison rapping, winning a lot of rap contests. But it's a love that I had. And to be honest, I didn't think that I would be accepted too much or embraced, because I know that rapping is a young man's game. But I still feel that there was some people who kind of like, who liked the type of raps that I was putting out in the music that I was doing. Everybody don't like this young rap, and I don't necessarily like it, but I'm not hating on it, because I know times and things change. You know, I know when rap first came out, you had older people not liking rap. So I know that, but I still know that it was people who still who liked the rap that I grew up on in the era of rap that I grew up on. So I just came out and wanted to give it a try.
Okay, that's what's up. And where can people go to find your music? They want to look you up, you know, get your YouTube channel, or any other social media outlets people can find you on?
Well, yeah, you can hit me up on Instagram at the number 16 _ T as in Tom, A as in Apple _ life. And then my YouTube page is 16 D as in dog, A as in Apple, life. And so, you know, I'm just on there. I'm not on any Spotify or Apple and stuff like that. And the reason being is artists aren't making any money off that, you know. So I would like to try to recoup a little something for the music that I'm making. So right now you can hit me up, like I say, on those sites and get at me. I'm selling my CDs and I'm selling USB flash drives, just hand to hand. That way I'm seeing, about $10-15 per CD. I'm seeing a little something because it's costful to go to the studio and, buy these beats and this studio time. So.
Right. Okay. Now, in this last question I want to ask you, I know you probably get this a lot, but I'm going to ask you anyway. I've checked out your channel and you've got some, hella fast stories you've been telling and just your life period is pretty fascinating. Just this 45 minutes I've been talking to you. Have you ever give consideration to like putting a book about your life or even a memoir?
I've thought about it. I haven't really given any deep consideration because, right before I got out of prison, the market was flooded and saturated with what they was calling urban novels, even though they wasn't even though they wasn't a nonfiction, which is real, and that's a love of mine. I love to read nonfiction books, but I think sometimes it's kind of hard for us to see ourselves doing these certain things, like because I never imagined myself getting the views that I have and the subscribers that I have on YouTube. I just created the page to try to make my music more visible. Then I started doing these stories because my producer had caught COVID and he wasn't recording. So I had 135 subscribers. And so I just wanted to, I wanted to keep putting some content out to keep them kind of going through my page. And one day I dropped a story and I looked up and that motherfucker had got 5,000 views in about 2 hours. And so, it just, like I say, this took off and did something that I never even thought was possible. So as far as writing the book, I never thought that it was possible, but now who knows, I may somebody may see it and see some of my stories and an avenue may open up that I never thought was possible. So that, that is something I'm honestly give some big thought about.
Yeah, definitely. All right, brother. Well, we go, I guess we can close on that note. Man, I want to thank you for taking time out your busy schedule to come on my platform. I really enjoyed doing this interview with you. I mean, it was really good talking to you. And I wish you continue much success. You know what I'm saying? Because you definitely doing some positive stuff. You totally turned your life around for the positive. That's what's up. So before we close out, you want to give out any shout out or say anything to the people?
First, of course, I want to give a shout out to you for having me on here, man. You was the first person to reach out to me, and I really appreciate that. Like I say, because I'm just a regular old dude, man. So I appreciate you reaching out to me. Then I want to send a shout out to all my brothers that's locked up, still doing life sentences, and just tell you, man, that if y'all in there, doing things that could possibly get you a write up and extend your stay, leave that shit alone, man. It's good out here, man. The women is beautiful. The food is good. You understand me? It's just so much to do out here, man. It's, being able to hang out with my family is good. And so, like I say, man, I hate to see a person locked up in prison. So I want to give a shout out to everybody out there to just try to come home to, to my homies, man. I got a good homie by the name of C.O. Lowe. He'd always supported me and helped me. I got a few other good buddies. My cousin James Jameson, he's in Africa right now. He likes to travel all over the place. When I came out, he supported me, my mom, my girlfriend, Tina, and just everybody, everybody that's still by me and supported me, my mother, my daughter Monique, and just everybody, man, that was there for me, my homies and stuff. I appreciate y'all. And and all the people who didn't started subscribing to my page, man. Big appreciation to y'all. Like I say, I never expected nothing like that. And so I really appreciate that you guys are appreciating my stories and rocking with me.
That's what's up. Okay, YouTube. That's going to be a wrap. Appreciate y'all tuning in, and I'll see you in the next edition of the Concrete and Steel Chronicle on PNG News Media.